Raise your fists together. I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Red and yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. Everybody is somebody. Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop bullying. Save the children.
Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sonia Whitaker, National Education Policy Director for Push for Excellence. And on behalf of the Rainbow Push Coalition, we'd like to thank you very much for giving of your gift of time and joining us here on our Saturday morning forum. We'd like to thank Word Network for bringing you to us and us to you. And yet we recognize there are many of you that are watching us right now on Facebook Live. If you're doing so, we'd like to ask that you like our page. And for the many of you that are watching us right now on YouTube Live, we'd like to ask that you subscribe to our page so that you may gain immediate access to all of the content that we have in store for you. And speaking of content, we can't do this without you. We need your financial support, and we've made it really easy for you to give. In fact, you can choose from one of 3 different ways. You can simply pick up that cell phone of yours right now and hold it to the QR code on your screen and give right on the spot. Or you can simply take that same cell phone and text the word PUSH to 41444. Text PUSH to 41444. You can even go to our website at rainbowpush.org and simply click on the donate button. Now, whatever you do, don't move an inch. Don't touch that dial. Stay right there. We'll be right back because the push is on.
Reverend Jesse Jackson parts a sea of supporters as he enters the Rainbow Push headquarters, ready to pass on his life's work to a successor.
Welcome to our house. My husband said he's pivoting, I'm retiring.
The organization announcing Friday the 81-year-old civil rights leader is stepping down as its president.
Everybody say run, Jesse, run.
Many who worked with him during both of his presidential campaigns in the 80s coming out to the start of the coalition's annual 5-day convention in Chicago. People showing their support and honoring the man who paved the way for the next generation of civil workers.
We brought together a rainbow of supporters to try to make America better.
Del Marie Cobb was Jackson's press secretary.
I want to represent hope. Give the people a chance. We the people can win.
When he made his second historic run for the White House in 1988.
It's about quality of life, and it's about quantity of life. And if you want to have both, you're going to have to make a hard decision, and that hard decision is stepping down. And I'm sure this is a very hard decision for him.
I've been doing this stuff for 64 years. I was 18 years old.
His absence as the group's president sure to be felt, leaving a gaping hole soon to be filled.
I've been with him since 1968. I cannot tell you what a rainbow without him is because I've never seen a rainbow without him.
So today, we celebrate one of America's greatest patriots. He has built coalitions that expanded who has a voice and a seat at the table.
Vice President Kamala Harris thanking Reverend Jesse Jackson for his 60-plus years of work in Chicago and around the world.
From South Africa to the south side of Chicago. He has and continues to bring together people of all backgrounds.
A standing ovation as Jackson took the stage.
Keep hope alive. Let me hear you scream.
That Rainbow Push slogan filling the pews at the Church of God as he chooses to pass the push torch.
I'm not retiring, I am pivoting
Jackson saying he will continue to teach, especially young people, how to fight for social justice. The civil rights icon, known as a powerful orator, has dealt with several health problems in recent years, but still strong enough to share his legendary message.
I am somebody. Respect me, protect me, never neglect me. I am somebody.
Jackson, a protege of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., a driving force in the civil rights movement, pushing for voting rights and education. Jackson ran for president twice, winning 13 primary elections. Harris crediting Jackson for paving the way for black politicians.
For generations that would follow, including President Barack Obama and me as the first black woman to serve as Vice President of the United States.
The man who will now take center stage at PUSH is Reverend Dr. Frederick Haynes, a minister from Dallas, now tasked with standing on the shoulders of this great, iconic figure.
I stand here on his shoulders because no one with sense would try to stand in his shoes.
Big shoes to fill on a big stage.
So, Reverend Jackson, thank you for where your shoes have taken us.
Welcome to the Rainbow Push Coalition Saturday Morning Community Forum. I know you've been wondering, what are y'all doing? What's going on? You heard about the pivot that Reverend Jackson announced. You heard about our new president, the Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Haynes from Texas. You got questions, but we have answers for you. What we're going to do today is give you a little bit of what does the pivot look like. You're going to hear from Congressman Jonathan Jackson as he and Reverend present our new president, Reverend Frederick Douglass Haynes. And then you're going to hear a message at the close of this broadcast from Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Haynes. And I know you're saying, well, what's happening? Well, we're in the midst of transition. And what we need you to do is to help us as we pivot, as Reverend Jackson says. Pivot means you're moving from one place to another place, and you're changing some things, you're improving some things, or we are reimagining where PUSH is in this 21st century. So we need you to, one, get involved. You need to get your membership, because as we continue to pivot, we want you to join us in the pivot. We're going to be doing a lot more things virtually. We're going to be doing a lot more things in person in the Chicagoland area as we bring together all of our partners, our faith partners, our education partners, our business partners, as we talk about, and as well as our elected officials. All of us coming together to look at how do we plan? What are we going to do to address the voting rights concerns that we see all across the country? I want to salute Ohio because they were able to go to the polls in an off-year election and make sure that women's rights are still being protected in the state of Ohio, sending a signal to the rest of the country, a red state that had a blue message. And then we're going to be talking about voting rights. You're going to hear more from Transformative Justice on a weekly basis, Attorney Daryl Jones, Attorney Barbara Onwine, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. We're going to be talking about what's happening in the human rights struggle. And so you'll hear a lot from one of our partners, the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union. And it's not all legal. We're going to be talking about the gun laws, what's happening with guns. We're going to give you some information about where guns are being purchased, how they're being put together, these ghost guns. We're going to talk about that. I can't tell you all that today, but that's part of the pivot. The pivoting means different kind of information. We're going to present it to you in different ways. We're going to be talking about all of the educational issues that we face around this nation, just what the curriculum should include, what it can include. Is states' rights agendas impacting education in ways that we could not have imagined? Then we're going to talk about affirmative action. How do we respond to the Supreme Court's decision on affirmative action? What does that mean to schools? What does it mean to students? What does it mean to businesses, small businesses, large business? What does it mean to governmental bodies? How do we make sure that there's inclusion and diversity in procurement? All of that, that's part of the pivot. And I know you're saying, well, what is going to happen? Well, I'm glad you asked. I want you to get involved. One, get your membership. Two, We're going to be coming to you with surveys. We're going to be coming to those of you who are in the Chicagoland area. You can participate with us on a weekly basis. As like for today, we're going to be in the Bud Billiken Parade. It's back to school time. We're going to talk about what does it mean to go back to school. We're going to hear about what changes are happening in education. How does AI affect us? I can't tell you everything the pivot is, but I want you to know we're pivoting, and we want you to pivot with us. Join us, get involved, get inspired, get encouraged, and stay tuned. We have a lot of information to share with you today.
Hello, I'm Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, House Democratic Leader, and it's a high honor and a distinct privilege to bring greetings to this 57th Rainbow Push Conference and to congratulate civil rights icon and hero, the Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., on your retirement. Reverend Jackson, you have been a phenomenal gift to the American people, to our journey for freedom, liberty, and justice for all, to trying to create a society that is anchored in the principle of equal protection under law, free and fair elections, and to make America the best version of herself. As a result of your leadership, your brilliance, your inspiration, your advocacy, your heart, and your soul, America is better off today because you decided to use your talents and abilities at great personal sacrifice to get involved, to stand up, to show up, and to speak up, to ensure that the arc of the moral universe bends toward justice. I still remember that first campaign that you ran in 1984, and I cherish the Action Jackson t-shirt that my grandmother gave to my younger brother and I, as an indication of the historic nature of that moment, inspiring millions to get involved in the democratic process in a way that has improved communities of color and indeed America all across the land. Reverend Jackson, we know, is a tremendous civil rights champion, a legendary leader, a voice for the voiceless, a defender of democracy, and a powerful, profound, prophetic, principled preacher of the word in the great tradition of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. As you take this next step in your journey, formally retiring from your leadership of the Rainbow Push Coalition, but never retiring from the work of ensuring that justice and freedom prevail in America, because we will always be inspired by you and the work that you have done. May God bless you. God bless your life, legacy, and incredible leadership. I know that there's still another chapter as long as you have voice to lend to making America the best version of herself, and may God bless the United States of America.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Jackson, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, the proud son of of Jesse Jackson and Jacqueline Jackson. It's my opportunity to introduce my father. And I just caught a few tears when I looked at that young man on the screen, talking about Dad, not me. And I was recounting, as our governor was saying about South Africa, and today is President Nelson Mandela's birthday. And I had some remarks prepared to share, but then that picture changed all of my remarks. Because that picture Let me get to my message right quick. And it's about faith. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not supposed to be here. Come on, brother. Come on. I'm a stutterer in speech therapy. Come on, Colonel. I get excited and my words don't come out as fast as my thoughts. In a world where people that are elected officials have smooth tongues and the gift of gab and they can talk. That's not where I come from. I like to fight. Come on. But the short of the story is it was March 12th, 1985, the day after my brother, Congressman Jackson's birthday, after we'd returned from Rome, visiting the Pope to talk about what was happening to Haitians in Miami. My father took a delegation to Rome to meet with the Pope. And then we got back to A&T and Dad says, we're gonna go to jail tomorrow. This is 1985. I had just gotten on the honor roll, just had a great semester. High school was behind me. I had a new vision for myself. And I'm like, Dad, this won't look good on my resume, having gone to jail. So we got to Washington, D.C., and he told me, Jonathan, don't you confuse with what you do for your living versus what you do with your life. So we went to Massachusetts Avenue to the South African Embassy. And we went free South Africa. In 1985, young people, blacks were not allowed in the South African Embassy in Washington, D.C. on Massachusetts Avenue. So we got arrested. On one day, my mother, one day, my sister, and the other day, my brother and I and my father got arrested for a free South Africa, a group that had a minority white population fully endorsed by the United States government controlling a black population. They didn't believe in democracy for every African that could vote. So I was 19 years of age and we had the opportunity to spend the whole night. They could have processed us and gotten out, but Dad wanted this to be authentic. So we spent a whole night in a DC jail with a little bologna sandwich with some mayo and those white donuts. I would have traded them for anything. He said, free Mandela. I'm 18 years of age. I'm like, who is Mandela? He's in South Africa, Reverend Haynes, and we should go to jail in Washington, D.C. for a free South Africa for President Nelson Mandela. Well, fast forward, that was one of the most embarrassing days of my life. But now, Dad, it's one of my greatest honors. Some people boast that they saw President Mandela's funeral. Some people boasted that they saw him speak. But you, Dad and Mom, few can say I went to jail for Nelson Mandela when it mattered most. In conclusion, faith. I didn't choose to do this. This opportunity chose me. And I'm proud to be here to serve you. And when see that picture, President Mandela at that time, Madiba, they called him, he wasn't taking any more public appearances. He was older in age and was primarily in a wheelchair and sitting down and had very large ankles. And I captured everything in that moment. And when he saw my father come in, after he heard he was in the country and said he wanted to see him, he exclaimed when he saw the Reverend come in, and he said, "Freedom fighter." Reverend Haynes, it takes one freedom fighter to know another. And when you're stuck in that jail for 27 years, he could have gotten out sooner, but he wanted the right to vote. So I say to you, Dad, keenly articulate, persuasively analytical, instinctively intelligent, a long distance running, got arrested in 1961, 62 years later. When Reverend Martin Luther King asked you to join him just a few blocks down from here, when you and Mom were living just a few blocks up from here, and you were a student and couldn't ask your dad for any money, that tears me up, because I don't know what that's like. I could ask my daddy for anything all the time, and I'm grateful. So that's enough of that, because y'all gonna choke me up. But let me tell you, I'm gonna lead with an upbeat story. My son, and I know I've expired my time, and in advance, I'm gonna have to ask you to dig a little deeper, because we've gone into overtime, but some things are worth overtime. People ask me as a child, what is it like to be Reverend Jesse Jackson's son? That's not a fair question to ask a child. He buys my clothes, my food, my house. I don't know. He's the only dad I've ever had. But as you get older, now having had children, having been married, and having got into this office and feel the weight and the privilege and the opportunity and the burden and the challenges, I can better answer that question. My son went to school one day, and I'm waiting for when is he going to find out Grandpa is Grandpa, but he's a little different than other grandpas. When they put up on Black History Month, Grandpa on the wall. My son came home, Daddy, they have Grandpa on the wall. But somebody says, that's not your grandfather. That ain't him. You don't know your grandfather. So my son was shaking. So he came home and asked, we talked about it, I said, sit down. Yes, that is Grandpa. And let me tell you what Grandpa has stood for, fought for, and why we celebrate African American History Month, to stop propaganda and put history and make it correct, because you just can't see the white on the page. You have to have the black on the page. There'd be no history if we weren't in it. So I told him, he went back to school. Next day he came back with his little chest poked out. I said, what happened, Jonathan? And he stutters. He says, I told him that is my grandfather. And then he said, and where is yours on the wall? So I want to say to every activist, marcher, protester, deacon, clergy member, first lady, pastor that has come out, that have put yourself on the wall, I honorably salute you and thank you. Let's make Rainbow Push so much stronger, bigger, and it can't be without the ministers, the vision. This is the height of the convention.
Hello, I'm Jamie Harrison, chair of the Democratic National Committee. You know, there are moments in life that you never forget. moments so great that can change the direction of a nation. But those moments can also change the direction of a person. We all have those moments that have inspired us, that have motivated us, that have defined who we are and what we will become. Well, one of those defining moments for me and so many Americans was the presidential candidacy of Reverend Jesse Jackson. His 1988 campaign left an impactful legacy on American politics that we still feel to this very day. You know, my first political moment was as a 12-year-old black boy in Orangeburg, South Carolina, watching Reverend Jesse Jackson at the Democratic National Convention in Atlanta. I was this young kid from Orangeburg, and I watched a man who looked like me, who hailed from the same state as me, who grew up similar to how I did. But he spoke to the hearts and minds of America, but specifically to young people in America. He inspired us to hope and believe in the fight for the country that we wanted to be a part of. Rev spoke directly to the needs and concerns of Americans from every walk of life, and that moment was a launch pad for me to understand that my dreams and my hopes and my aspirations and those of my community were not confined by the limits of our means or the color of our skin. By participating and engaging in the political process, we could fight to make sure that the words of the founders of this great nation could be made real, that all people are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Rev, now 35 years later, that little boy will be gaveling into session the 2024 Democratic National Convention. You will have inspired that moment, because, Rev, you have inspired me. Reverend Jackson, thank you for allowing all of us to continue to stand on your shoulders and to build further on your legacy.
Hello, everybody. United States Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock here. Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, sir, you are an American icon, a towering patriot in the best sense of the word, who has been in the struggle for decades, pushing our nation to live up to its highest ideals and stirring folks from every corner of life to get involved, to create a better future together. But I have to say that not only are you an American icon, you are and have been my personal hero. From the earliest days of my youth, you were an example for me in both your vision and your voice of what's possible. You blazed the trail for Black leaders in faith and in politics. And without you, I know that I wouldn't be here as Georgia's first Black United States Senator. If some of us are able to take office because people like you and before you paved the runway so smooth. So thank you, sir. Thank you for all you've done to try to create what Dr. King called the beloved community. Thank you for never giving up. Thank you for reminding each of us, in your own inimitable words, I am somebody. Your retirement is well-deserved. Relax. How do you tell Reverend Jackson to relax? But try, sir. Try to relax. It's now on us to continue to fight and to finish the race. From protecting the sacred right to vote to ending income inequality, to boosting education and uplifting maternal health and combating the gun violence epidemic. There are so many different avenues for us to follow in your footsteps by rolling up our sleeves and getting involved in the fight for justice. And know that as I push for legislation to enact federal voting rights protections, Reverend Jackson's commitment and dedication to the struggle is on my mind. His 84 race, his 88 race, the time and time again that he registered people to vote and convinced them that they had a voice and that they could make a difference. His indefatigable persistence for equality helps propel me to keep going. So thank you, Reverend Jesse Jackson. Thank you, Mrs. Jacqueline Jackson, and your family for all that you've done and continue to do. Congratulations on this new chapter know that we will keep pushing like you've always taught us. Thanks so very much. Keep the faith and keep looking up.
Push Excel's goal is to inspire students to strive for excellence in education in spite of personal, family, and community challenges that they might experience. How do we do this? By advocating for educational policies that guarantee equal funding for all students without regard to race or economic standing. By engaging parents, students, and teachers in pursuing high-quality education and striving for educational excellence at every level. And by forging partnerships with community-based and public sector stakeholders in education. Now, Push Excel is a national model program with the purpose of connecting principals, parents, popular personalities, and students in a bond and to support students at every level on the educational ladder. Now, we want you to become a member of the Rainbow Push Coalition and Push Excel. Your annual membership can help us to change policies that impact students, colleges, and universities all around the country. So step up and sign up today. Membership is only $35, and if you're a student or a senior, $15. Just go to our website, rainbowpush.org, and push join to become a member or push donate to support the Push Excel program. You can also text the word Push Excel, that's PUSHEXCEL, to 41444 on your cell phone, and you can give us any amount that you feel comfortable giving or call us at 773-256-2775. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you. And remember to keep hope alive.
I was a young man at Bishop College, and I was preaching everywhere at Bishop College. Doors were open, and I was preaching everywhere. And then I noticed, Rodney, I stopped getting calls. Wasn't nobody calling me to preach no more. And I went back and asked the people, what happened? They said, it's a new young man who's come to Bishop. His name is Freddie Haynes. And all the appointments that I was getting, Freddie Haynes was getting them. So I said, that's all right. I said, we got a lot of life. We got a lot of life ahead. We're going to move on. Forget that. I came on back to Chicago, worked hard in the Rainbow Push Coalition, gave my life to Rainbow Push Coalition, went over to Kosovo to free soldiers in the Rainbow Push Coalition, did everything. Reverend called me, he said, Meeks, I want to talk to you about my successor. I had my chest all stuck out. I said, I know my hard work was going to pay off. He said, Meeks, I think that Freddie Haynes should be my successor. I said, that doggone Freddie Haynes has done it again. I can't think of a more qualified, more capable, more articulate young man among us to lead the Rainbow Push Coalition. My brothers and my sisters, the Reverend Freddie Haynes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Again, let me express my appreciation to Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr., first of all, for being who he is. We are because he is. We are because of what he has done. Our lives are better. This world is better because of the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. I salute you. I thank God for you. I thank God for your inspirational influence. I thank God in this moment for 84 and 88. 84 and 88 literally transformed the trajectory of this country. And because of what he did in 84 and 88, we had so many black and brown persons of color, elected officials, swept into power on his coattails because his defeat
was not a loss, it was a victory for each and every one of us. And the world knows that if it had not been for 88, 08 never would have happened. And so we thank God. The truth reveals that this freedom fighter right here, Jesse Louis Jackson, belongs on Mount Rushmore as one of the truly great leaders in the history of the world. That is not hyperbole, that is exactly fact. Why? Because Jesse Jackson, through his heroic sacrifices, has achieved iconic status, a true prophet. And I think I stop right there. He is a prophet of the living God who has dared to speak truth to power, empower those who are powerless, and as a consequence, history has been transformed by the trajectory set in motion by Jesse Louis Jackson Sr. Thank you, Queen Jackie Jackson. That's a bad sister right there. Love her so much. I do not want her to cut me, and so I'm going to always stay in her good graces. The Jackson family, we salute you. I'm so proud of that Jonathan Jackson. Congressman, I want to share with you for just a few moments Esther chapter 3, verse 15, and chapter 4, verse 1. It reads from the Voice translation, "The messengers were quickly dispatched by the order of the king. Then the decree, the policy, was publicly proclaimed in the citadel of Susa. As the king and Haman relaxed and drank wine, the city of Susa was thrown into chaos." Chapter 4, verse 1, "Mordecai mourned when he found out what had happened, ripped his clothes, put on sackcloth, and wiped ash onto his body. Then he went through the city weeping loudly in anguish." Too woke not to weep. Well, being too asleep to weep, I hope you understand right now I'm using the antithesis of woke in an age where woke is under attack. There is a politics of anti-wokeness that is going on in this nation. One particular candidate has declared that the state where he is trying to run for the Grand Wizard, he has basically said that Florida is a state where woke goes to die, and he is building a presidential campaign on anti-wokeness. In a real sense, he is too asleep to weep when he sees suffering humanity, and because he is too asleep to weep, he has mounted an anti-woke campaign. Well, my sisters and brothers, when you talk to the Grand Wizard of Florida, please provide him with an education about the history of the term woke, because a history of the term woke will let you know it goes back to 1931 when Lead Belly, the brilliant blues singer, saw what was going down with the Scottsboro Boys and decided to come up with a song and warn us about a criminal justice system that was unjust and criminal, and declared in the midst of the song, "Y'all better stay woke and not go there." Not only did Lead Belly tell us to stay woke, but who was it? 1971, a play entitled Marcus Garvey Lives. A line in the play says, "Mr. Garvey done woke me up, and I'm gonna stay woke and wake up others." Wait, it didn't stop with Garvey. My homegirl Erica Badu in 2008 sang a song, Master Teacher, and in that song Erica said, "I stay woke." Well, they're not the only ones, because Martin King, the very last sermon he preached on a Sunday morning was entitled "Remaining Awake Through a Great Revolution." If I Freddie Haynes remix it, he was saying "Stay woke through a great revolution." Well, I'm old school, so I gotta let y'all know I can't stop with King, because Teddy Pendergrass, when he was rolling with Harold Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes threw down like this: wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed, no more backward thinking. It's time for thinking ahead. The world won't get no better if we just let it be. We gotta change this world, just you and me. Teddy was crooning, we better stay woke. Well, my sisters and brothers, woke simply means to be self-aware, conscious, critiquing the politics and economics of white supremacy, and being alert to what's going on so that you can create a better world. Please tell Grand Wizard DeSantis that's what it means to stay woke, because in our text, my sisters and brothers, we discover something that is similar to what's happening in our nation. Check out what's going on. Laws have been passed, have been handed down by the Supreme Court of Persia, and you have too the king and Haman who have gotten together. The laws have been passed. It's a death-dealing policy. And now at the end of chapter 3, look what the text says. They're enjoying happy hour. Perhaps they have a sugar daddy like Clarence Thomas, and they are experiencing lavish trips and going all over the world. Maybe they have a sugar daddy like Samuel Alito, but the bottom line is they are having a party. They are experiencing a good time, but while they are having a party as the beneficiaries of some sugar daddy, they have passed a policy that has created chaos in the streets. The chaos in the streets has come from an affirmative action law that has been gutted, and as a consequence, one particular newscast in its lower third, it rendered or interpreted what went down a few weeks ago by saying race has been outlawed as a factor in college education. That blew my mind, because they did not outlaw race as a factor when it comes to inequitable distribution of funding in public education. They did not outlaw race as a factor when it comes to what? Climate change. And on the front lines of climate change is racial injustice, or should I say environmental racism. And one particular author has talked about the fact that because of environmental racism, our students inhale toxins that then attack their brain cells. They did not outlaw race as a factor in climate change and environmental racism. They did not outlaw race as a factor in our communities being economically exploited and financially neglected. They did not outlaw race as a factor, and as a consequence, they're experiencing a party as beneficiaries of their sugar daddy benefactors. But there is chaos in the streets. But look what the Bible says. There was one by the name of Mordecai, and Mordecai in chapter 4 verse 1 begins to weep because the brother was woke. He was too woke not to weep, because whenever you see what's going on in the country, in the world, if you please, you ought to be woke enough to know when to weep. I hope we are woke enough to know to weep about children in the Congo who, because of the greed of the first world countries, find themselves being victimized by the absence of child labor laws, and they are working from sun up past sundown and retrieving material for our cell phones. I weep for the children of the Congo. I weep for our sisters and brothers in West Helena, Arkansas, who don't have access to fresh water, just like our sisters and brothers in Flint, Michigan, and Jackson, Mississippi, who were living under apartheid in 21st century style. I weep, my sisters and brothers, for our sisters and brothers there in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who were told, in spite of the trauma they experienced over a century ago, they were not eligible for reparations, even though Tulsa to this day is making money off of their pain. I'm too woke not to weep over their pain. I weep for them because I am woke. And the Bible says that because my man Mordecai was woke, he began to weep. And look what the text says. I'm almost done. He's woke and he weeps because of his perception. He perceives what's going on. He recognized there is policy behind the pain. He recognized what Jesse Jackson has taught me, and that is that public policy always has personal consequences. It's not enough to pray for our lives to get better. It's one thing to pray for healing when I'm sick. It's another thing to have a policy that gives us access to health care when we have pre-existing conditions. It's one thing to pray for black women who find themselves experiencing the pain of losing their lives in their maternity, but it's another thing to pass laws that outlaw racism and sexism when our sisters find themselves with a maternal mortality rate that is the same as many so-called third world countries in what's supposed to be a first-class nation. I weep for my black women because we live in a nation where in the name, please don't miss this, my beloved clergy colleagues, in the name of pro-life, they gutted Roe versus Wade, but they've done nothing about the maternity mortality rate of black women, and they claim to be pro-life. They're not pro-life, they're pro-birth as long as it's a white baby that's being born. And I'm simply trying to say I am too woke not to weep because I see the policy that's behind the pain. Jesse Jackson taught me years ago, he's preaching, and blew my mind when he says, preachers, make sure you don't just preach about the sin within, you preach about the sin we live in. That's a shout right there if y'all missed that thing, because racial injustice is a sin we live in. Economic exploitation is a sin we live in. Communities that are infected by climate change, that's a sin that we live in. Sin we live in is a sin that we must attack, prophetically denounce. I'll make it plain like this. They tell the story years ago that in a home for mentally challenged patients that they were told if they wanted to be free, they had to pass a test. What was the test? They would go into a kitchen and the water faucet was turned on, and Dr. Meeks and all of your preaching brilliance, I wish you were preaching this because you would know how to handle this. And here's what happened. They turned on the water faucet. It began to flood. And while the kitchen is flooded, I'm about to shout you, the kitchen is flooded, and while it's flooded, they would give a mop to the candidate who wanted to be free. And the candidate would take the mop and begin to mop around. They would say, no, you're not ready for freedom. Who won freedom? Those who went to the faucet, turned it off, and then cleaned up the mess. If you're not careful, we'll spend all of our ministries mopping up the mess and not turning off the faucet. You see, when we spend our time feeding the hungry, that's mopping up the mess. But when we fight poverty and hunger, that's turning off the faucet. When we visit those in prison, that's mopping up the mess. But when we fight against criminal injustice laws that indiscriminately put our people behind prison bars, that is turning off the faucet. Jesse Jackson taught us we've got to turn off the faucet and then mop up the mess. But then something happened. I'm done. We gotta go. The text says there was perception. Of course, I get that from Freire in Pedagogy of the Oppressed when he talks about that perception is the first step toward world transformation, because once the oppressed perceive what's going on behind the pain, then they have a power to transform the world. And so perception ought lead to protest. I like it because Mordecai, and let me just say parenthetically, my womanist scholars won't let me move further without saying Esther is problematic. Let's be real, Esther's problematic because Mordecai set Esther up in a harem. And that meant that Esther was a victim of human trafficking, of sex trafficking. I got to be true to my womanist scholars in the house, because my womanist scholars would also say that Haman, you got to, Mordecai, you got to talk about the brother because he's the one that told her to play down her African features in order to fit in the Persian Empire. So there's some problematic stuff, and I had to drop that just to be hermeneutically honest, pushed by my womanist scholars. But I close by saying at least the brother had the sense to protest. I'm done. That's what he did. He protested. He tore his clothes and wore sackcloth and ashes, covered himself in ashes, and began to weep loudly because he's protesting the injustice. I guess I'll give it to you like this. His protest dramatized the plight of those in pain. Jesse Jackson brilliantly throughout his career has made the cameras follow him, and he would dramatize the plight of those who were in pain, because once the cameras followed him, he would then point the cameras to those who were in pain. And maybe, my beloved colleagues, that's what we've got to do. We've got to go down to Tulsa and bring the spotlight of the cameras, and then put the spotlight on our sisters and brothers who are suffering in Tulsa. And because they are suffering, Tulsa is making money. Maybe we ought to protest and dramatize the plight of those in West Helena, Arkansas, and tell Governor Huckabee, don't send us no water, but you fix this system, because we deserve to have a fixed system. We've got to go to the Supreme Court, lie down on the steps of the Supreme Court, and tell the Supreme Court that we're going to stay right here and have our own affirmative action, that you can't strike down with your abnormality. I'm done, but I know what's going on. That's why my favorite city to preach at is the Chi, and that is y'all ready to shout, but you got something in you that's thinking, okay, but hold on, what about Beulah May Donald? Are you going to leave Beulah May Donald in that predicament? Well, I can't do that. I brought it to this convention because Beulah May Donald, when that church-going district attorney would not prosecute the Klan, called up to Chicago, asked for Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. went down to Mobile, Alabama, led so much protest that the prosecutor all of a sudden found some evidence out of nowhere. The prosecutor then prosecuted the Klan in Mobile, Alabama. Y'all not shouting. They were put on trial before an all-white jury, and before that all-white jury, they came back with the verdict, and those white men were convicted, not only convicted, but sentenced to life, one of them, and death, the other one, because Jesse Jackson went down to Mobile, Alabama, and protested and stood with Sister Beulah May Donald. I'm not done. After that, she said, but my son is still dead. And they said, well, why don't you sue the Klan? Y'all, she sued the Klan, and an all-white jury gave her a judgment of $7 million. The Klan was then bankrupt, and when they were bankrupt, the Klan said, we don't have any more money. She said, what you got? We have a headquarters. I'll take it. She got the headquarters, and once she got the headquarters, she then sold the headquarters for over $300,000, bought her very first home, and when you went to visit Beulah May Donald, she'd open up the door and say, welcome to the home financed by the Ku Klux Klan. I'm done. That's my word.
because he protested, because he showed up, because he told her that she was somebody, because she kept hope alive. Beulah made Donald experience a victory. And so preachers, what we gonna do? We gonna protest because we are too woke not to weep.
Dr. Kim, I went to jail with a group of 7 students, July 17, 1960, almost 60 years ago. We never stopped moving. I lost a few of jail cells and death. We never stopped moving. I thought it was time to write some of it down so the older generation can learn how we did, and what we did, and how global it was. It was a speech about Mandela in South Africa, India, Qatar, about Gandhi in India, here at home. This book tells the story, so please get it and give it to your friends. Read it, let's argue about it, let's discuss it.
Yep, so the book is Keeping Hope Alive, Sermons and Speeches of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. It's quite a good collection. You know, we've got sermons and speeches from around the globe because you have made such a global impact, not just here in the US, but around the world.
Thank you for tuning in to our International Saturday morning broadcast. We need your support. Here are ways to give to Rainbow Push Coalition. Text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444 to support the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. and Rainbow Push Coalition. When you shop, Amazon gives. Visit Amazon Smile and select Push for Excellence as your charitable organization by starting your shopping at smile.amazon.com.
We are sanctuary. We are a sanctuary.
When I think of Rainbow Push, I think of 2 words: social justice,
education advocacy,
political empowerment,
freedom and equality,
corporate partnership.
Stop the violence. Save the children. Don't get in. Shut it down. If we don't get in, shut it down.
Political change,
inclusion, evolution, progress, justice.
Jesse Jackson.
Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Somebody protect me. Protect me. Never neglect me.
We want to be bridges to end these cultural gaps.
We're going forward by hope, not backwards, by fear.